Continuing with unit number 3 of 10th class, that is metals and non-metals. This is our lecture number 2. Now we come to the first question of this lecture, that is explain formation of ionic compounds. These are salt-like compounds which are made of positive and negative ions. So now what are ionic compounds? First of all, let us define these compounds. Ionic compounds are the compounds which are formed by the mutual strong electrostatic force of attraction between oppositely charged ions, and these ions, they are produced by the mutual transference of electron from the valence shell of one atom to the valence shell of another atom. For example, we take the formation of NaCl. NaCl is formed by combination of sodium with Cl. They are having the atomic number 11. This is having 17. It has the configuration 281. So it is having one electron in excess to the noble gas configuration, and this is having the deficiency of one electron. Therefore, one electron is moving from sodium to Cl outer shell. It was having 7 electrons earlier. Now one electron comes to its field. Now sodium becomes 28 and Cl becomes 288. So these oppositely charged ions, so formed by mutual transference of electrons from the valence shell of sodium to the valence shell of Cl, they are held together by a force. This force between these two ions, that is called as ionic bond. Similarly, we can explain formation of MgO. This is a group of second group. This is a group of your 16th group. This is an element of first group. This is an element of 17th group. Now element of second group, it has 2 electrons in addition to the noble gas core. So these electrons, they can be transferred to oxygen, which is having the deficiency of 2 electrons. So these electrons, they are transferred to the outer shell of oxygen. Magnesium acquire 2 positive charge because it has supplied 2 electrons to the oxygen to produce oxide ion. So now this is your magnesium oxide. Ionic bond is formed between them. The electrovalency of magnesium is 2 since it is donating 2 electron, and that of oxygen is also 2, it is gaining 2 electron. Electrovalency of sodium is 1, Cl is also 1 since they are losing and gaining 1 electron. Then we have the formation of CaCl2. Ca is having atomic number 20, it is having configuration 2882. 2 electrons in excess, they are given to the 2 chlorine atoms. This is calcium chloride. The bond formed again is ionic bond. Now what are the factors which affect the formation of ionic bond? First factor, so we are mentioning the factors. First is the ionization enthalpy. The atom which is to lose electron, in sodium in first case, magnesium in second case, calcium in third case, these are the species which are to lose electron. Therefore, energy required to withdraw electron from their outermost shell, that should be low. So ionization energy should be low of metallic atoms. They should require less energy for loss of electrons. If they require more energy, then formation of ionic bond will be a bit difficult. Then we have electron gain enthalpy. The atom which are to gain electron, here Cl, oxygen, again Cl, they must possess high electron affinity. they must have strong affection for electron. That's why they will be able to form accept electron easily and will form ionic compound. Then third is lattice energy. It is the energy released when 1 mole of ionic compound is produced from its ion. This is represented by U. This is lattice energy. If lattice energy is high, it means the strong force of attraction is formed between oppositely charged ion. It should be high. It depends upon charge on ion. Charge should be high. Size of ions should be small. So all of these 5 factors, they support the formation of ionic bond between the oppositely charged ions. Then we have the properties of ionic substances. This is our question number 2 of the lecture number 2. Question number 2, give properties of ionic compounds. First of all, we deal with the physical state of these compounds. All the ionic compounds, they are 100% solids. Rarely they are liquids. They are never in the gaseous state, so their physical state is solid. Generally, they are solid because of the strong electrostatic force of attraction between oppositely charged ions. Then we have their solubility. They are soluble in water. Since water is a polar solvent, it can easily separate the ions, oppositely charged ions. Then we have electrical conductivity. They are good conductors of heat and electricity, so they conduct heat and electricity due to ion formation, good conductors. In aqueous or molten state. Then we have melting point and boiling point. Since their electrostatic force of attraction is quite strong, so they will definitely possess high melting and boiling point. And so these are the properties. They have high density. So these are the properties of ionic compounds. And then we have the next activity. Perform an experiment to prove that acid, halides or metal, they impart color to the flame in which they are heated. So let us now do the flame coloration test. That will be our question number 3. So we are having important question. Question number 1 is, what happens when NaCl is heated on platinum wire or NaCl heated in sodium vapors? Then we have question number 2, when LiCl is heated in flame on platinum wire. Then question number 3, when KCl is heated in the flame. In all these three cases, they give color to the flame. In first case, when NaCl is heated on platinum wire or sodium chloride is heated in sodium vapor, similarly we can heat LiCl in lithium vapors, and KCl can be heated in potassium vapors. In all these cases we get different flame colors. In first case, answer to the first question is, it gives Yellow color, golden yellow, you can call it as a golden yellow color to the flame. Now why color is seen in the flame? It is because of the excitation of the valence electron of the sodium. Sodium is having one electron in the valence shell that is excited to higher level when it is heated here, and this electron when returns back to the original state, it emits the absorbed energy in the form of photons of visible light. It emits a yellow color during that. Similarly, we have the lithium chloride heated in the flame. Lithium electron is excited and it absorbs more energy radiation, that is violet color, and will be reflecting that color when it comes back, so it appears violet, it appears yellow. Then we have KCl. When KCl is heated in potassium vapors or KCl salt is heated on platinum wire, it also gives the yellow color to the flame. So in all these cases the electrons they get excited from the lower level to the higher level. When these electrons they return back, they will absorb they will release the absorbed color in the form of vapors, and so they give color to the flame. It also gives dirty yellow color to the flame. Then we have barium. What happens when barium salt or barium chloride is heated in flame? So barium chloride when heated in flame, its electron they also get excited, and when they return back they release the green color in the flame. So flame appears green when flame test is performed for barium metal. Similarly for strontium metal, it will be producing crimson red color. For lithium metal, we'll get the violet or crimson red color. And then we have the calcium. Calcium, we have seen calcium will give the brick red color to the flame. So these flame color, they are to be kept in mind what kind of color is produced, what kind of metal. So they can be asked sometime in the exam. Then perform an experiment which will prove that salt solutions conduct. This is very simple experiment. You take copper sulfate or sodium chloride solution in the voltmeter. It is then fitted with two electrodes. When electric current is passed through the solution, it starts passing because the electrolyte they produce ions and they are oppositely charged ions. Then anions they start moving toward the anode. Cation they will start moving toward the cathode, and it will result in the internal conductivity, and outer conductivity will be seen by the conventional current which flows opposite to the flow of electrons. Electron in the outer circuit they will move from cathode to anode to cathode, while in case of the conventional current that will move in the opposite direction. So this is the activity. Then we have the what do you know about occurrence of elements in the earth crust? So we are having now question number 5. What do you know about so metal? They are actually of three types of metal. Metals which are having high reactivity, they come up in the activity series, they come above hydrogen in the activity series. Then metals with moderate reactivity, they are present just above the hydrogen in the activity series. Then we have the least reactive metal which are lying below hydrogen in the activity series. These are copper, silver, and your gold, along with mercury. So we have three types of metals. Metals of low reactivity, they are the metals which are generally found in the native state since they have less reactivity. Then metals of high reactivity, these are the metals which are found in the upper side of the hydrogen. Then we have the metal with moderate reactivity, they are found just above hydrogen in the activity series. Now what do you know about occurrence of elements in the earth crust? The element they occur in two states. Number one is combined state. Most of the metals they are found in the combined state. They are lying above hydrogen in the electrochemical series. These are lithium, potassium, cesium, barium, calcium, zinc, iron, nickel. All these elements which are existing above the hydrogen in the electrochemical series, they exist in the combined form. Lithium exists as LiCl, Li2O, LiCl, LiNO3, Li2CO3, etc. Potassium is found as K2CO3, exists as KCl, it exists as carnallite, MgCl2 water. Then cesium, it also exists as a cesium chloride, cesium oxide, and so on. Barium exists as barium chloride, barium carbonate, barium sulfide. Calcium also exists as a CaO, CaCO3. It exists as a CaS also, CaSO3, CaSO4. Then zinc exists as ZnS, zinc blend it is called as, zincite, ZnO, zincite is ZnCO3, calamine, ZnO, and it exists as ZnCl2 also. Iron, it exists as a ferrous sulfate, it exists as a FeS, it exists as a FeCO3, siderite. Nickel exists as a NiS, it exists as a NiO, it exists as a NiCl2. So these are the combined state. Why they are found in the combined state? Since their valence shell is not completely filled, so to complete their valence shell, they often combine with non-metals and exist in the combined state due to their high reactivity. Then we have the second occurrence of the metal. They are generally found in the native state. These metals possess low reactivity. They are gold, platinum, silver, and you can say the copper sometimes. They have the less reactivity. Copper exists in the both form. It exists as native metal as well as it is found in the pure state in the form of sulfide, chloride, etc. So these are the metals existence in two states. Then we have the next point, how do we extract the metal from the ore. So first of all, let us define the mineral and ore. So what are minerals? Any combined state of these elements, that is called as mineral. And ore is that combined state of these, out of these minerals from which metal can be economically extracted. जहाँ से मेटल को हम इकोनॉमिकली निकाल सके, that state of the combined state of the element is called as the ore. So all the ores they are mineral, but all the minerals they are not ores, because from all the minerals we cannot extract metal economically. These are the only few minerals from which metal can be extracted economically. Those minerals they are called as ores. So our next question, first of all, how we differentiate between ore and minerals. So our next question is question number 6, define mineral and ore. So what is mineral? Any combined state of the element, whether it is present in the form of chloride, sulfide, sulfate, carbonate, that state is mineral. But ore is that state of the mineral, that mineral from which metal can be extracted economically. It should not cost such high as the available metal in the market. If metal is available at the rate of 20 rupees per kg in the market, it should cost less than 20 rupees to us in the lab. If it costs more than that, then there is no use of this mineral. So ores are only those minerals from which metal can be extracted economically. Now we will be using the steps which are used for the concentration of the ore. So question is, mention the steps used in concentration of the ore. What are the steps used in the concentration of the ore? So first of all, we will be taking ore, which is a part of mineral. Then this is subjected to concentration methods. Now what are the concentration methods? They are involving, concentration involves separation of gangue. Gangue means impurities. They are also called as matrix from ore. It can be done first of all by powdering and crushing. First of all, ore is powdered and crushed in jaw crushers or stamp wheel method to bring it in the powder state. Then we do the separation of impurities by hand picking. If impurities are in larger side, then they are separated by hand picking. Third is washing with water. We wash the ore with water to remove lighter gangue. Then we have fourth method, that is called as deflatable method. Ore is kept on the sloping floor of the table and it is washed with water. When lighter gangue particles, they are washed away, leaving behind the heavier ore particles. And then we have gravity separation. In gravity separation, what is done? The ore is dropped in a two double-necked compartments. Then from the lower side it is blasted with water. Water blows up the ore as well as the gangue. Gangue means lighter in particle. They get extracted from the upper chamber, while ore particles, they are being heavier. They get settled in the lower compartment of this double chamber system. So this is the way how to separate heavier ore particle from the lighter gangue particles. Then sometimes we are using magnetic separation. This separation is used to separate magnetic ore, for example iron ore Fe3O4 from silica. Can be separated by running the ore over a magnetic roller and magnetic belt. When the magnetic particles, which are iron oxide, they fall near the belt, while the non-magnetic impurity, they fall away from the belt. So these are the method for concentration of the ore. Now we divide after concentration we have to extract metals. How to extract metal from the ores? We have three columns here: metals of high reactivity. These are the metals like zinc, iron, nickel, etc. These are the metals with moderate activity. These are the metals with low reactivity. Highly reactive metal, they cannot be extracted by reducing their oxide with heating with hydrogen or carbon monoxide. They are extracted by electrolysis. The electrolysis of their salts is done. So we get metal at cathode. This is refined. It is subjected to refining. We have number of techniques of refining. Then we have the metals which are having moderate reactivity. They don't have either the more reactivity, neither they have low reactivity. These ores, they are of two types: carbonate ores, and second are the sulfide ores. Or hydroxide ores. Now these ores, they are subjected to calcination. What is calcination? Heating up of the ore in the absence of air to get metal oxide. roasting involves heating in excess of air. It will convert sulfide ore into oxide ore. So by roasting and calcination, here we are doing roasting. Roasting and calcination, they are giving us the oxide or the oxides of the metal, they are reduced to metal. Both of these, they are reduced, reduction of to metals, and then they are subjected to refining. So refining is the last step in the metallurgical operation. Then we have metals of low reactivity. They generally exist as sulfides. Sulfide ore, they are always subjected to roasting. It will convert sulfide ore into oxide ore. Then the reduction of oxide is done. We get metal. These are subjected to again refining. So here we are having the three types of metal which are extracted. The metals of high reactivity, they are refined, they are produced by the electrolytic extraction, and then the metal so obtained, it is refined electrically. There are a number of techniques of refining. Then we have metal with moderate reactivity, which have the medium reactivity. There are two types of ores of these metals. They are carbonate and sulfide ores. Carbonate ores, they are calcined, they are heated in the absence of air, and when they are heated in the absence of air, they get converted into oxide ores. And once they are changed into oxide ores, then they are reduced, the oxides are reduced to metal in this case. Then we have sulfide ores. Sulfide ores, they are roasted, heated in the excess of oxygen, where metal sulfide, they get converted into oxide ores. These oxides, they are subjected to reduction to metal. Reduction can be done by carbon, it can be done by carbon monoxide, it can be done by other metals, and after reduction we get the metal which is subjected to refining. Similarly, we have the metals of low reactivity. These metals, they are either found as in the native state or as a sulfide ore. If they are in sulfide form, they are roasted first of all to get oxide ore. Oxide ore is reduced electrolytically or by other method to get the metal. And now these metals, they are subjected to refining. The refining is of many types. Number one is by distillation. The metal which are having less melting point than impurities, they are heated. These metal, they get vaporized, and these vapors, these metal get vaporized. These vapors, then they pass through they are cooled down, we get the pure metal in this case. So this is done by distillation for those metal which have less melting point than impurities, or reverse is the case. Then we have by oxidation. Irons, for example, when prepared, it contains large number of non-metallic impurities, carbon, sulfur, phosphorus. Now such iron is heated with excess of oxygen. All the non-metallic impurities, they get oxidized to oxides, and these volatile oxides, they escape out from the system, leaving behind the pure metal with very less quantity of impurities. Then we have leaching. Leaching is done to purify gold and silver. In this method, the metal ores, they are treated with sodium cyanide or potassium cyanide, which produces the complex of gold and silver metal. These complexes are treated with the molten zinc. When molten zinc separates out these metal, gold and silver, and zinc combines with the cyanide to form a complex which is separated through filtration. So this is leaching. Then we have the fourth technique, that is called as coaling. The molten ore is shaken with the green logs of wood. The green logs of the wood, they supply hydrocarbon gases. These hydrocarbon gases, they remove the impurities from the molten metal and free the metal in the pure form. Then we have the next method, that is electrolytic refining. Some metals are refined by electrolytic method. In such cases, the impure metal is made as anode, and a pure metal thin rod is taken as cathode, and suitable electrolyte of that metal which is likely to be purified is taken in the a voltameter, then electrolysis is carried out. All the pure metal from anode, it goes to cathode and gets deposited at cathode, leaving behind the impurities just below anode. These impurities are called as anodic mud. So these are the ways. Then we have number of other ways. Van Arkel method, which consists of the conversion of the metal into the unstable volatile compound. This compound is cooled down and is taken out. When this compound is heated at high temperature, it releases metal in the pure state, and the other reagent is escaping from its surface in the form of gas. So these are the ways which are used for the extraction of the metal, which are used for the metallurgical operations. Then we'll be taking a few more topics in this chapter in our next lecture, and we'll be taking textbook questions in the next lecture.